family's views.
I mentioned a bit of this yesterday, but didn't go into it at all. I will take some time and deal with it this morning. And this is what appears to be a continuing divide inside the opposition People's National Party. I'm not under any illusion at all that the factions that have existed for a number of years inside the party, that they are going to be any closer to resolving whatever issues is now the issues that are now separating them, and come together in a very short period of time, in that it really would be unrealistic for anybody to expect that. But one would have hoped that at least after the last presidential election, which gave a clear mandate to Mark Golding as the president of the PNP, that you would see at least the outlines of an approach that could aid in resolving some of the issues that have led to division inside the party. But what we have seen so far are signs of deepening rifts. Undoubtedly, there is great mistrust among people who occupy key positions in the party. And there are those who believe that in spite of whatever victory Mark Golding may have had, he does not have any God-given right to select his slate for General Secretary and for Chairman of the 82-year-old party. It has been the case, from my understanding, that the President would signal internally his preference for persons to occupy those key positions. You need your chief lieutenants not to serve you, but people who you believe would have the political acumen, the ability to build the machinery, the ability to communicate, and who will so understand you, because that understanding is crucial. The working relationship is crucial for the effective running of the party. But what seems to have happened this time around, somebody sent me yesterday an interview that Mark Golding, since elected president, he did on News Talk, in which he signaled he would quite like Angela Brown-Burke, Dr. Angela Brown-Burke, to be the chairman of the party. He explained to the host of the program that she was his campaign director or manager in the election just concluded, and she has good political stock, and that were the NEC members to choose her, one, he would quite like that, and two, she would become the first female chairman of the party. He also indicated that Dr. Dayton Campbell, who was a supporter of his, he would be happy to have him as his general secretary. I'm understanding that is probably the first time that a president of the People's National Party has openly and overtly given these indications. They would normally mention them in the corridors of the party so that the members of the NEC could understand what the preferences are and would likely support the preferences in peacetime. But this is not peacetime. It hasn't been for a long time. So what we have coming out of this very unusual public disclosure by Mark Golding is a letter or a memo which I read yesterday from a group calling itself Concerned NEC Members. This is a party of letters, you know. They write a lot, not to mention Paul Burke's 4 and 7 pages, which I quite enjoy reading. I hope he can talk with me. I have a lot of time for Paul Burke and his views on all matters political. So the letter that came yesterday says the NEC is not a rubber stamp. The National Executive Council of the People's National Party, as you know, it has just under 330 members, I understand. And it is the highest decision-making body of the PNP outside of annual conference. And they are scheduled to meet on the 29th of November, at which time the chairman, the general secretary of the PNP, will be selected or elected, this following a decision by Fitzjackson as chairman and Julian Robinson as current general secretary to step away from their positions because of the defeat in the September 3 general elections. So this concerned group, they have not put their names to it. It would have been good to have the names because otherwise it's a bit of a cowardice that is going on here. We don't know how many members these are. We don't know how representative these views of this unnamed, undisclosed membership. But they write things that have some currency. They say the NEC is a constitutional body, the constitutional body which elects gen secs and chairman of the party, who in turn hold office at its pleasure, left to the sole judgment of any party leader. So this is where now they seem to be directly hitting back at Golding's public request to have people who supported him installed by the NEC in these two crucial positions. They say, left to the sole judgment of any party leader, the holders of these offices will tend to become puppets, and surely dictatorial practices will enter the running of the party affairs. But is this really correct, concerned NEC members? Hasn't it been the convention inside the party that the leader would make a very quiet request of members and the leader's wishes would be granted without those who take up the positions becoming puppets? And is it that you're saying that all leaders previous to now who have had their chairmen and gen secs as they wish, they were dictatorial in the functions that they executed as leaders? Anyway, it continues. There has been continuing debate that our party leader wants the NEC to respect his desire to have his nominees in these two offices. But we as NEC members believe democratic ideals must prevail, as has been the party ethos historically, and the president should never be openly involved in internal elections. In other words, you're saying, Mark Golding, you are wrong to have spoken openly on this. We should never always subjugate our views because the party leader says so. And I agree with that line. Every member must have a voice, and that includes disagreeing with the party leader or anyone else. In the past, robust internal debates and disagreements characterized the PNP and the instances of inappropriate media and social postings were far less then. I agree with some of these sentiments, but I would love to find out from the author or some of the subscribing individuals to this note. Isn't it the case that this apparent principled position is now being taken because some of you have not accepted that the side that you supported, either in this 7th November 2020 election or the 7th September 2019 election, and you will never submit to the democratic vote of the delegates? Some people just have a difficulty, as does 45th President of the United States, have a difficulty accepting that they have lost. And they will do anything, even to raise so-called points of principle. They seem to be points of principle, and they may very well be. But are there any other reasons why these issues are being raised now? Could it be a failure to accept the results? A failure to accept the convention in the 82-year-old party? And to allow the president, in reshaping the party, to have some of his trusted lieutenants, not to the exclusion of all others? Because Mark Golding must realize, he ought to realize, that in his quest for unity, it would be unwise for him to always push what he wants, especially if what he wants is seemingly going to offend those who are part of a camp long established. So he has to be willing to give way, to suppress some of his wishes, and to reach out across the divide, because the divide is quite wide, to reach out to others, to bring them in and keep them even closer. That's how he's going to build the relationship. But I think Mark Golding's interview on News Talk to tell the NEC members what he wants demonstrates a bit of political immaturity that I certainly never expected of Mark Golding. You don't talk those things publicly. You use the corridors of power inside the party to send your little signals. And in fact, in 2020 world, you don't even write them. Because the moment you write them, somebody go and screenshot it. You need to know how to leverage the power that you have without people latching onto it to feel that you are dictating to them what is to happen. So in light of this, I have no doubt. Well, let me say, there may be some doubt, but I strongly believe that the author of this letter, of this note, who labels him or herself as concerned NEC members, whoever wrote it and whoever it is were part of the group, it could be only two. And it could be one posing as two. They probably come from a one PNP supporting group who later went on to support Lisa Hanna, who lost in the last election and who would not be willing to accept Brown Burke as chairman, nor Dr. Dayton Campbell as general secretary, because in their mind, it is the voice of Esau, but the hand of Jacob. They think it's the voice of Mark Golding, but it's the hand of Peter Bunting that is running the party. And it riles them up so badly that they can't countenance it. So what we have is the Vice President, Philip Paulwell, who said, leading up to the elections, 7th of November presidential elections, he didn't want to openly say who he was supporting because he wanted to lead and to be part of the fixing and the healing in the party. But he couldn't keep his wits about him. He couldn't do that. So that a day or two before the presidential election, imagine my shock when Peter Philip Paulwell caused a press release to be sent out. A press release to be sent out titled, Paulwell urges Region 3 delegates to rally behind Lisa Hanna. I don't know how Mr. Paulwell in his mind believes that he somehow now can bridge this divide in the party because he didn't openly support or didn't openly campaign with, I beg your pardon, he didn't openly campaign with Lisa Hanna. But on the cusp of the election, on the 5th of November, he urged Region 3 to support Lisa Hanna. And as it turns out, Lisa did extremely well in Region 3. She won Region 3, I think, by the numbers that I saw. I'm going to have to check them back. And here it is now, having supported Lisa Hanna as a vice president, having campaigned for Lisa Hanna, despite saying he wouldn't, because this last rallying cry is a campaigning event that came at the right time, and it led to results for and on behalf of Lisa. She didn't win the nomination, but it assisted. She won Region 3. He has now come out after hearing what Mark Golding has said as president of wishing to have the first female chairman, who was his campaign director or campaign manager, Dr. Brown Burke. Philip Paulwell has now thrown his hat in the ring to become the chairman of the party. Yeah? And then for general secretary, we have not only Dr. Dayton Campbell, and this is quite interesting because Basil Waite, who supported Mark Golding in this November 7 presidential election, I understand that he also has desire to become the general secretary. He now being a deputy general secretary. And I understand he's not well at the moment. He has had COVID. And I think he remains in the hospital, unless things have changed in the last 24 to 48 hours. But I wish Basil speedy recovery. And then not only that, Raymond Price. I don't know who Raymond Price supported in the presidential election. I don't remember him coming out for anybody. But Raymond Price has indicated via social media that he will accept the nomination to become the general secretary come the 29th of November at the NEC. So what will happen is that if Mark Golding wants the people he says he wants, there's going to have to be a vote for it. And that's great democracy. But the party had better be prepared for the added divisions that will emerge. In the meantime, Mark Golding can say to himself, and he perhaps should, work out the long-term benefits or detriment to things remaining the way they are, and maybe signal to his desired people, Dr. Brown Burke and Dr. Dayton Campbell, to step back, because this will not end very well. He has to calculate it, and he has to demonstrate that he's taking some very calculated risks at this time. He has to demonstrate greater depth of thought to these matters than he has so far exhibited. Because I hope, and I have said this, that one of the biggest political gambles he needs to take is to get Peter Bunting into the Senate. He needs to dominate, he needs to appoint Peter Bunting to the Senate. And if he were to do that, and to get his chairman and to get his general secretary, he's getting the whole hog. So he needs to sit down and see what is most important to him and how he's going to find a compromise position. Let us see how they work it out. I would love to talk to Paul Burke. Yeah, I see Paul Burke is reported as saying that he is totally in support of the GenSec not being an MP. It is something that the party has said repeatedly. It is something that is in the appraisal committee. It is something that we've always said should be. And that is because people need time. So far, every single GenSec the party has had that I know of, except, I'm trying to remember if when Colin Campbell was the GenSec. Colin Campbell, if he was an MP. Was he GenSec or spokesman on? Anyway, I'll find that out. But what we will find is a lot of principled position being put up now when people want to assert the positions that they have. But Mark Golding, you need to listen. Listen deeply and go back in the solitude of your thoughts and mark out this end game. Go back to the chessboard before you move a piece. Decide what opening you're going to use. Decide what is the end game you want before you make the moves you want, and don't be too anxious to speak too openly your inner thoughts. Silence cannot be misquoted.